So I'm going to focus on inclusive. We are very serious about inclusivity because it changes the way we behave. Part of the way we behave is to actually seek people who think differently and then put them on staff. Now, I will guarantee you, if you do that, inevitably you're going to come up with some conflict. It's going to happen, right? So how do you deal with that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So we all have a different perspective, and that's a good thing, but it also makes it difficult. Well, every once in a while, we have to have what I call the conversation about the EGR people. I call them the extra grace required people. Do anyone know anybody that you can think of that needs some extra grace? Like you walk into the room and you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with that person. Or everybody doesn't want to work with them because of the history they've had. I'm going to give you a definition that I like, which is unmerited favor. Okay? Unmerited favor is grace. Okay? You do not deserve it, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Right? And that's a hard thing to do sometimes when you're dealing with someone who is being difficult or who isn't sharing a similar attitude toward you. Okay? This is a hard thing to do, but I call it grace. And extra grace required are people that need more of that. I need to give you more unmerited favor in order to make a productive working relationship. And some people would say, well, that's not fair. Why do I have to do that? Why can't they do that? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So first, I'm going to give you an acronym, but first, before I give you the acronym, I'm going to give you the words. And the first one is humility. Okay? Humility is don't consider yourself too highly. You could be the person in charge, you could be the most important person in the room, but don't consider yourself too highly. In other words, look around at the people around you. Everybody has a valuable perspective. Okay, I'm going to go back to that value we talked about, that inclusive value, right? If you're inclusive, that means you value other perspectives. That means my perspective isn't necessarily the most important perspective in the room. Okay? So as a result, consider others as important as yourself. That's being humble. It's the opposite of pride. Right? Now, you actually may be the most important person in the room. That may be true, right? But don't act like it. So number one, humility. Why is that important? Because oftentimes when you run into someone who needs a little extra grace, one of the things that they're struggling with is the fact of what I'll call value. Their own value. And not like what the world has been telling them sometimes, especially when you walk into a room and everybody goes, oh, I don't want to work with that person. Don't think that they don't see that. And don't think that doesn't take a knock on their value. Right? So humility is a big thing when it comes to helping you deal with someone who is actually being difficult. Right? So number one, humility. Number two, understanding. Okay? We all have different perspectives. I just gave you a glimpse into my own personal perspective. I'm a father of 3 children, grandfather of 2. I have a family, I've got a background, I've got a backstory. Well, guess what? So do they. I'm going to tell you a little story right now about a difficult person I can think of in my career. Because this is being recorded, I'm going to change names to protect the innocent. We'll call him Phil. Now, Phil, I had to go start working with. I wasn't asked to work with Phil. I was told, you need to work with Phil. Now, Phil been in the company longer than I had. I'd been in the company probably at that point 20 years. He'd probably been there 30. Right? And he definitely had like a superiority attitude. Like, I know what I'm talking about, you're basically an idiot. Right? And as a result of that attitude, over time, everybody I would work with that would normally have worked with him were like, I don't want to deal with him ever again. He was being difficult. Right? And so part of my professional career development, I actually got to a point where I was being recognized like, you know, you're really good at dealing with difficult people. You go work with them. Right? Okay, great, I'm glad you think so. But to be quite honest, in my heart, I didn't want to work with them for the exact same reasons. Right? But I had to. And in part, because I'm good at it. Okay, so what made me good at it? Well, part of it was understanding where he was coming from, which gets to their motivations. Some people actually have very specific motivations that makes them difficult. They may not share your motivations. They may not share your passions. They may have a different thing that is, I want to climb this ladder and you're in my way, so I'm going to pull you out of the way, right? So what are their motivations? This is something that you don't know unless you talk to them. And sometimes you'll find that their motivations aren't the same as yours. Okay? So I call that the competitive versus cooperative. So first thing I would ask you to do is recognize when you're dealing with a difficult person, is this somebody I'm supposed to be cooperating with? Right? In my career, now I've only been working for one company in my professional career post-college, right? So we've always had the same mission, right? And that mission is what we're all supposedly working for. So if I run into somebody who's actually being difficult, like sometimes they forget that, guess what, we're not supposed to be fighting each other, we're supposed to be working together. So how do we actually get to a point where we can actually work together? So recognizing when you're actually in a competitive situation versus a cooperative situation. And then how can you flip it to be cooperative? I'm going to go back to my friend Phil at the beginning. Like I said, I was told, essentially, I need you to work with this person. And it took the better part of a year. And then what ended up being a 4-year professional relationship. For him to even trust me, it took a lot of time. And it took a lot of hugs. Say that, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek, a lot of humility, understanding, and grace for him to start to trust me and believe that, you know what, I'm not really your enemy. Okay? So when you see a difficult person, understand their perspective, where they're coming from, understand their motivations, and try to give them hugs as much as possible. So, and then try to flip them from being a competitor to a cooperator. Understand their past hurts. A lot of times people are difficult because they've actually been hurt in the past. Try to understand that. I told you a little bit about, you know, Phil's life at home. What made that so difficult, right? So try to understand that because now you're sensitive to it. Now sometimes people don't want to share past hurts. You know, this is a sensitive thing. Like we're all people, and sometimes we've got, I'll say, armor that we put around our hearts to protect ourselves. But that armor can also come out as fangs and claws and teeth, right? So try to get past the past hurts. And then helping relearn trust. Okay, so in my opinion, my humble opinion, a lot of people being difficult is because they don't trust you, flat out. They just don't trust you. And you need to earn that trust. And that trust takes time. It's not going to happen easily. It's going to take a little bit of investment on your part, hugs all over again, right? To prove to them that you are trustworthy, straight up. So I think people are being difficult in part because they're being competitive, because of past hurts, and they don't trust you. So how can we help them relearn that trust? Great. People are difficult. You're difficult. I'm difficult. We're all difficult. How do we get past that? So what are we going to do?